Do you have one of these every week? Is this like the 68?
And five, four, three, two, one, and blast off. Welcome to the 68th episode of the Korea podcast. I'm your host, Jack, located in Ulsan, South Korea, and I'm joined today by Martin. I'm going to mess up your name again. Sufford. Is that right?
Cessford.
Cessford. That was so close. Martin, longtime expat, arrived in Korea basically in the same year as I have, 2005. He's left 3 years ago, but pretty much like you've been in Korea for about the same amount of time as I have. Right. So the Korea podcast, what is it? It's a podcast that talks about anything and everything related to running and operating of hagwons, gombubangs, as well as life in general in South Korea. It takes place every week at 10 p.m. as it does right now. And I try to get on some interesting people who have either lived or worked in South Korea in one way, shape, or form, and who bring something interesting to the table. And Martin here, after sending his bio, we chatted somewhere through one Facebook group or another, and Martin's got a pretty interesting background, and I think some of the stuff that you will be willing to share might be of interest to a lot of people who are watching, or the small proportion of people that is watching.
Well, we'll see.
So welcome to the 68th episode of the podcast, man.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me, and thanks to our mutual friend Rhett for maybe bridging the gap to make this happen. So yeah, I'm pleased to be on the show and hopefully share some wisdom or insights that I've gained over the last 15 years of living in Korea. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I posted your brief bio underneath the video, so anyone who's watching, if you're interested, you can read it. But let me just read it quickly out here. Martin is an international educator of 15 years plus and a father of 3 amazing kids, which is it's amazing in itself, man. 3 children. I've got 2 of my own, and that's a handful, right? Martin is originally from the UK. He moved to South Korea in 2005, which is the same year as myself, as I mentioned, to pursue his dream of studying Taekwondo, teaching and supporting learners and experiencing a new culture. So maybe we can start with that. What made you, I guess, 2005, how old were you then?
I was 25 in 2005.
All right. And what made you decide to come to Korea to pursue Taekwondo?
Well, yeah, those 3 things bundled together really, but I think I was living in Manchester at the time. I went to university in Newcastle and then moved to Manchester with some friends and working in, just a regular office job. And one kind of cold, rainy day, like most days in England, I was walking home and I saw a poster on the wall saying like Taekwondo beginner's lesson free. I thought, well, that's interesting, I might try that. So I went down and tried it. And that was about 2003 maybe. And yeah, I loved it. And I went like 3 or 4 times a week and took my tests to get my yellow belt, my green belt, and blue belts, and almost got my black belt before I came to Korea. But through that, we learned a lot of the Korean cultures where you have to bow and hold your arm kind of when you're shaking hands, and we counted in Korean, and maybe part of that was subliminally transferred, but the main reason I think I wanted to go was to teach and to try my hand at teaching without having to quit my job and go back to university for a year in England to get my PGCE. So I thought I could get a couple of birds with that stone, which was Taekwondo in the homeland of Taekwondo in Korea, and also try my hand at teaching, which is what I've been doing for the last 15, 16 years. So, yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do the Taekwondo for that long because after my black belt, I got my black belt in 2006. But then I had a bit of an injury, which meant that I couldn't do anything really. No skiing, no marathon running. I used to run marathons, and definitely no Taekwondo, which is a bit of a shame because the instructor that at the place where I used to go to, he was adamant to put me in for my second Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'd been, had some surgery, and I'm like, look, I can't do anything. He's like, don't worry, we'll put you in for the test. I'm like, no, I don't want to die. I don't want to be in a wheelchair. Just like, don't worry. But anyway, I think reason got the better of him. He gave up trying to persuade me and to do my second Dan. But if I hadn't got injured, I think I would have continued, up until today. But interestingly, when I first went to Korea the first day, I was dying to get into the Taekwondo scene, and I got a friend, not a friend, like what would you say, a colleague at the time to take me to one of the local Taekwondo places, and the instructor at the time, he said, "Go on and show me what you can do." And so, being a proud blue belt, I showed him like the pattern that you do in England, and his jaw dropped on the ground, and I'm like, "Oh, what did I do? I've done something wrong." And he kind of he didn't speak English. He dragged me into the samushir, the office. Yeah. And he pointed at the map, and he went, and he pointed at me, and then he pointed at North Korea, and he's like, "You, North Korea, me, South Korea." Apparently I'd been studying North Korean Taekwondo for like 3 years. So.
Oh, really?
He quite happily chucked the white belt at me and said, "Start again." So I had to start all again.
That is interesting.
Yeah, that was a funny.
Yeah, I did Taekwondo myself in Canada for a number of years. I started off with Kung Fu in Germany, and then when we moved to Canada, I started doing Taekwondo for a number of years as well. But the interesting part of it, my experience with Taekwondo was very different from what you're describing. Like, to be honest, I always approached martial arts with kind of having watched Bruce Lee religiously and Jackie Chan, and just consuming those movies on a daily basis, literally just living and breathing martial arts. And so Taekwondo was just an outlet. It had nothing to do with cultural origins or anything like that. So even in the classes, my trainer was a white fella. It was, so he was kind of, he had, I think, second or fifth Dan, I don't remember. Maybe not fifth, second or third at that time. This was years back. Now he's, he's advanced a lot more. But the cultural aspect of Taekwondo was very minimal in those classes, and we were just focused on exercising and just kicking ass kind of in the air. So when time came, years later, and I was about to take a flight over to South Korea, the fact that I studied a part of Korean culture way back never even crossed my mind, So talking to you, like basically that having taken Taekwondo is basically what kind of drove you towards wanting to come to Korea, right?
Yeah, I think it was, as everything is, it's a culmination of different things that, kind of add together to get to that tipping point, I think. And I think, if I'd have studied wushu or kung fu, maybe I would have ended up in China,
right?
As a teacher, So I think it was, one of those things that did pull me there. And I think for us in England, it was really difficult to pass your belt tests. Like people were breaking their feet and crying and bloody noses, and it was really difficult to get your blue belts. And I think the main guy at the time he kept saying that he was one of the 12 disciples. I think he was one of the first 12 Westerners to ever study under some other guy.
Okay.
A Korean guy. And all the patterns and stuff, they were named after famous Korean historical figures like Yi and Dangun and Yulgok. So when I went over there and said that I knew about all these historical people, it was kind of eye-opening
Hmm.
and interesting for a lot of Koreans to hear it from a Westerner. So
Right.
yeah, it was really interesting. And getting my black belt was a different story altogether. It's kind of yeah. I was a bit disappointed, to be honest, how easy it was.
In Korea.
Although we did train hard, and we went to the testing place, a big stadium, um, and then there was like, I don't know, 35 of us, 36 of us lined up in a big kind of square shape, and we
Right.
did the pattern. I think we did 2 patterns, and then we did a minute of sparring. Um, and before we started, which is it's kind of a really interesting lesson that I've shared with all my students a lot of times when before they take a test, is before I took my black belt sparring test, one of the judges came over to me and put his hands on my shoulder and said, "Listen, it's not it's not a knockout competition. You don't have to knock the guy out. You just need to you need to show us everything that you've done,
Hmm.
that you've learned up until the black belt. So the aim is not to knock out your opponent, it's to show the judges what you're able to do."
Right.
And so it was really an eye-opener for me, and it's a lesson that I always tell my students when they take a test, or if they have like a writing test.
Hmm.
Usually, secondary and up, they don't have to answer the question as such. They just have to show their thinking and what they are able to do. So it's showing your ability, really. Sometimes it's worth more than winning the game or knocking somebody out.
Right.
So lots of lessons from day one, really, in Korea.
You've been married for 10 years. Well, congratulations on the married to a Korean lady, same as me. It's not always an easy path, but I mean, this is my first and only marriage, so I really have nothing to compare it to. But I think there's a lot of us fellas having to combat similar situations, gender or cultural difficulties that we encounter. Martin worked from 2005 to 2017 in a number of institutions in Korea, from Hagwon through public schools or to college level, before opening his own school as a gyosubso. So between 2005 and 2017, what kinds of work have you done?
Well, yeah, you probably know yourself. The older you get and the more things you do, the more blurry it gets with like dates and times and stuff.
Sure,
But
sure.
I originally went to Korea to work in Hagwon
Hmm.
as an English teacher, and it was a pretty small town, and we were what would you say, we were hired out to a local high school.
Hmm.
So on my first day, I was teaching a class of like 35 high school boys. But the rest of the time it was elementary school, middle school, general ESL, like Let's Go, books, bit of phonics. The Hagwon teachers, would ask for some private lessons or some lessons, and I did a year of that and went back home to England, did my CELTA for a month, stayed at a friend's house, did a CELTA in Manchester, then came back as a public school teacher. Did that for 2 years, which was nice. It was like a little rural elementary. I think I did two or three elementary schools. And after that, I think I got a job at the college. Like there's two colleges. There were two colleges in the town.
Hmm.
I got a job as a visiting professor, and so I guess I moved up the ranks as I was reading on all the like Dave's Cafe before I came, and
Hmm.
got a cushy job as a university lecturer. And when I got that job, I got married. So that was about 2010. So I'd been there about 5 years. It taken me 5 years to have positions in all those places.
Right.
And I worked there for about a year, or maybe I got the job in 2008. Anyway, I was working at the college for a couple of years. Then in the space of like 3 months, I left the college, got married, bought a house, bought a car, got married, opened up a school, and found out we were pregnant shortly after. So it was kind of all these, milestones that you get as you get older, all coming within the same 6-12 months, which is really
Yeah, it can be
Looking back, it's
overwhelming.
amazing. Well, it kind of was, but I mean, looking back, anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So it was tough, but the tough times, that's what builds character. So yeah, it was yeah, an interesting ride. And from there, my wife had a gyosopso, which is teaching Chinese right across the road.
Hmm.
There was like a crossroads, a tiny crossroads. She had the school there, and I had the school across. So it was Chinese and English, and lots of students went from one to the other, or from the other to mine.
Okay.
Um, and that's when I started really to learn, or yeah, I mean, I picked up my Korean from that day because um, I thought that my wife would maybe come and help me do a lot of the consultations.
Hmm.
Uh, but she did like one or two, and she's like, "Oh, you do it yourself because I'm busy."
Right.
So I'm like, having been in a small town, like I'd gotten quite a bit of a name, as just like a decent person,
Yeah.
um, which can go a long way, I think. Back in that time, I guess, as much as it does today. And so yeah, she just left me in the deep end, and I started to consult and give level tests and feedback, and the Sangdam with the
Hmm.
parents all in
Hmm.
Korean, which is the best way to learn, I think, is when you have to, in the deep end you have to do it. So my Korean, my everyday Korean, consultation Korean, it's probably, I don't know, it's probably quite fluent. I don't know, maybe like C1 level. I haven't taken a test yet. I really want to take a topic test, and I did a practice listening for the topic 2 and got like 99%, but the writing, I don't want to tell you what score I got for writing. Reading.
And I'm
Yeah,
gonna tell you
speaking
what's
and
going on
listening, I'm
with
really
I
good at
speaking.
Korean.
Hmm.
And so yeah, that helped a lot. Kind of like get further entrenched into the Korean culture, which is kind of my second home now. I feel like moving there when I was 25, just turned 25, fresh out of childhood.
Hmm.
I feel like I grew up in Korea. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's it's a nice chunk of time that you've spent here. I often times feel kind of weird about that because I moved around myself. Hey, Bruno's in the chat. Hi, Bruno. Um, and same goes for me in terms of how much time I've spent in South Korea. It's about almost a decade and a half, over a decade, 12 years, right? 13 years.
Mm,
So
wow.
I'm 45 now, which means I've spent almost a third of my lifetime here in this country,
Hmm.
which is
Yeah.
frightening on a lot of levels, particularly considering that my Korean is not as it should be. Like it's definitely not up to par. I know I have the ability; it's there, but I just need I don't know. I need to be in a classroom and have structured, um, learning opportunities. I can't do it on my own because I'm too lazy.
Yeah.
I have so many things going on that I can't. I don't have time or even inspiration to sit down and learn on my own. So I need to be in a classroom setting and have a
That's
teacher, bossing me around.
completely agree. That's what I feel like here with Vietnamese. Having learned Korean to a kind of high level,
Hmm.
I know I could do it, but I'm just so busy, and I know how much effort it takes, and I think I'm not prepared to or able to give that effort because it's all going in different places.
Right. So, okay.
So I know
So
what you
we're
mean.
on 2017. Hagwon. Um, so you had your own gyosupso or a Hagwon? You opened an actual Hagwon.
First of all, it was the Gyosupso
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of years. I'm not sure how long, and then my wife's school and mine, we combined and opened officially a proper Hagwon.
Okay.
So
Um,
yeah.
but now you ended up in Hanoi since
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2017, right?
About that time.
Yeah.
Um, we had some kind of family issues, and I went back to England for a little bit. But then an opportunity came up, which was kind of too hard to turn down, and we kind of came for a scouting mission, and
Mm-hmm.
felt that with the way that the the way we felt that Korea's, I mean, I guess I can speak for my wife as well. We felt that um, the market, the private education market in Korea at the time felt like, contracting, closing market with demographics, people getting older, less kids, hagwons that used to teach only high school are now opening up classes for, kindergarten kids to maintain the numbers. So it felt like it was going to be a continual increase of effort for maintaining maybe the same numbers of students.
Right.
And then lots of big competition were coming in, and we came over here for a look, one for a weekend or something, and we just got a good vibe. The average age was like 26, 27, 25. 2 or 3 kids, growing population, middle class, bulging, with size and disposable income, a huge demand for English, and kind of like Korea. Although I wasn't there, I can imagine it was like Korea in like 2000, early 2000s, maybe late 90s, maybe if we take away the IMF crisis. But it's really a place where getting an education does make a difference to a person's life, and the students that do or can afford to go abroad, for example, and study in America, Canada, or England, or wherever, and they do literally have the ability to come back and be the leaders of the companies, right? Which I kind of felt wasn't there in Korea. And I think it's not a good or bad thing at the moment, because they've both got their good and bad points. But I think in Korea now, students that would go abroad, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong because I've been out a couple of years, students that do go abroad for their university education, by the time they come back after 3 or 4 years, they've missed so much change. Then they're the ones that are kind of at the bottom trying to catch up. You know what I mean? So here, if they go to America, it's so much more advanced that when they come back, they're bringing the knowledge back. If they do come back. So I guess they will, if they're not now going to experience a brain drain like Korea did.
Yeah, I think
until internally things catch up. So
Korea is advancing quite quickly, I guess. So yeah, you may be right on that. I think if students go abroad just to study English and come back with the English, it's not a very significant progress on their part. I think kids would have to go abroad and head over to a prestigious university and come back with a significant amount of beefed up resume and PhD type credentials to stand out here from the crowd. Red's in the chat room. Hello, Red. Welcome.
Hi, Red.
Right. Okay. So let me go on here with a bio. As it grew, okay, so he joined with his wife's school to open an official hagwon. After a short stint in the UK, he ventured over to Hanoi, Vietnam, to work as on a number of edu startups before settling into his current role with a very good international school, where he works with operations and academics to build and facilitate educational programs and support for learners. So when you went back to the
UK, mouthful, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's good. Well, that's what makes this conversation interesting. When you went for the short stint in the UK, was that to get your teacher's credentials?
No, it was literally like less than 3 months. So nothing to do with gaining positive experiences. Just
Okay.
a bit of personal stuff. Maybe I can't go into it here, but yeah, when I was there, I was able to kind of have, maybe take a bit of stock of what's happening and where we're going, especially with a growing family, and try to take a bit more responsibility. And some opportunity came up, like I just talked about, and moved here, and I set up the English division of another private school, which was catering towards Koreans. There's a big Korean community in Hanoi. and so I was able to set up the English side of an educational institute, and that was opening up the second branch as well. And so I was involved with that, and as I was involved with that, got to meet lots of parents, lots of Korean parents, and continue my consultations and get to know the Korean population here. And I was also able to travel around the international school scene, looking for a good school for my daughter. And when I was looking around, I got to meet a few people, and eventually one of the people I met who seemed to be interested in what I could do was the owner's son of the international school where I was sending my daughter. So we ended up hooking up and moving to set up his international private education center in town, in the center of town, which was kind of a quasi international school but private education center in the middle of town. So I helped him set that up, and then again thinking more futuristically, more ahead. I was really interested in getting into the classroom in an international school. So I took a year to do my PGC with Nottingham University, a distance learning thing, which is how I spent my midnight to 1 a.m. kind of time every day.
Right.
So I managed to hammer that one out, and that's landed me now the ability to work full time in an international school as a proper teacher, I guess. So yes, I've kind of, before starting this job as a teacher that I will be in August, the role that I was doing with the international school and their education center also led me into the school, which is an IB school, and it's a selective school. It's quite selective actually, and so children can take a test to get in. A lot of them fail, high percentage fail, and so one thing led to another. I ended up being their deputy admission director, so I was able to revamp and create all the admission testing exam sheets and rubrics, and go through all that, which is really interesting. I got to meet a lot of parents along the way, and a lot of Vietnamese parents, which is good. And through a translator, or a lot of parents speak English. I was able to get a feel of what the Vietnamese parents are looking for education for their kids, and start to join the dots and see a lot more of the similarities between Korea several years ago and Vietnam right now. So it was a really interesting time then. After that, I moved away from the admissions director role to be more of a what would you say? I was working one foot in academics, one foot in operations, bit of communication, marketing, talking to parents outside, talking to students that want to come in, training, tutoring students to get to pass, to get ready to get to the level to pass the test.
Right.
A bit of everything really, which gave me a lot of experience, a lot of flexibility, but was really interesting. And I think, as you know, maybe a lot of foreigners, especially Hagwon owners in Korea, for me anyways, I felt like I lived more kind of a professionally isolated life for quite a while, because you kind of work at it, and if you're a teacher, Hagwon owner, and you might be doing I was doing the role at the college in the mornings, and then I'll come back and do the Hagwon, and then if you got some high school students, you might finish late, and then working Saturdays. It's kind of, and then you got a family, and you devote yourself to work and family, and so
there's
it
no
can be a
social
very
life.
lonely. It can. I'm not. I had a decent social life, but I think professionally speaking, it can be quite solo-esque, if you know what I mean. And so that's I did continue into my roles here, which which is really, really good because I had a lot of flexibility. I do have a lot of flexibility in my role and a lot of responsibilities put on with that, but we deliver the results for the school, so it's really good.
Yeah, that
And
sounds
I
like
get
a
to meet a lot
handful,
of
but
parents. Yeah.
yeah, I totally understand. When you're saying being a Hagwon owner, having a family, and that's basically the position I find myself in, morning till evening, and then it's back home because I want to spend my time with my kids, and they're back at work on Saturdays. It just doesn't leave a lot of time for anything else. But so the question I wanted to ask you is, and this may be of interest to some people who may be wanting to expand. I've been looking at getting a PGCE, and I graduated with an MA in linguistics, applied linguistics from the University of Nottingham. And I'm aware of their PGCE, their distance PGCE, which I think you could do in Hong Kong at their location in Hong Kong. I have no idea what the situation there is right now. Might not be the best place to go. But
Okay.
You said it's a distance degree, right?
Yeah, there was a week where we had a face-to-face
Okay.
with the tutors. After that week, it was all online,
So
distance learning.
okay. So basically, once you get the PGC, that particular PGCE, it's not considered to be it doesn't hold the same
Wait.
weight as one that you would if you got it on the spot, like back home, for example, right? Like you're missing the...
Yeah, you're missing the NQT or the QT
Right, okay.
status or
So
or the license.
yeah, exactly. So my question was, having that not listed, does that pose a problem when you're looking for jobs in international schools?
It could do. It depends on the school and their stipulations. So, for example, the reason why I did mine was because there was actually a person who had a job in the school, and they had gotten the job because they had that certificate. And I was recommended by another friend as well. So that's one of the main reasons, was because there was a use case. I guess there was an example of somebody who'd gotten a job at a school that I would like to work at with having that certificate. But it's kind of a murky area when you kind of look into it, because it doesn't give you NQT. There are not many that would give you the NQT status with being distance. There is a Teach Now, I think the US one, that does give you a license in the US somewhere, like in Florida. You get a Florida license, and you can actually transfer that to the UK through some way. But if you wanted to do the NQT or the QT, you'd have to be in the UK for a year. Some schools accept the certificate, PGC, like a postgraduate certificate of education. Some schools accept that, but usually they will ask for a minimum of 2 years experience on top of it, like post-certification experience. So it's kind of like you can get the certificate and then you have to get some experience, but there's levels of schools that might accept you with less experience. I think I was lucky because I've been working at the school for that amount of time, and so they're able to go that way.
Right.
And a lot of it's to do with visas. Different countries, international schools require different certificates to grant a visa. So it might be that school wants to hire a good teacher, but if they don't have the certificate that ticks the box to get the visa, then there's nothing they can. Their hands are tied, really.
Right.
So there's lots of different aspects or variables that you have to think about. Like I couldn't get a job in a school in England, let's say, even if I had all the experience under the sun, because I don't have the NQT or the QTS or whatever it's called. That may change in the future. Yeah, that might change in the future. I think depending on like the demand, because they might, as regulations change, they might say they might want to recruit more teachers into the system, and then they'll lower the standards in terms of the requirements. So that
Right.
might happen. But or there's tests. I think there's some tests you can do. It's changing all the time, though. It's what was applicable 4 years ago, 2 years ago. It's changing all the time. But I would, and I'm not sure if it's a good analogy. I think the distance PGCE is kind of like the difference between a distance PGCE and like an on-site that gives you the NQT is the same difference between like an online TEFL and a CELTA.
Mm-hmm.
They're both a certificate. They'll both get you a job, but the CELTA is the proper one that will get you the proper jobs, good
Right.
jobs, and the online one is one that'll tick a box to get a visa. Having said that, I've thought about that analogy for a while, but I don't think it's applicable in all cases.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I would have just been giving my school a bad name, but which is not true. It's full of certified proper teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, it's something that I would recommend if you've researched the kind of countries and schools and career path that you want to go down. But if you're really kind of looking for the security of being able to go into any international school, you might want to consider like the on-site or the ones that offer NQT or QTS status.
Right.
If that
Okay.
answers the question.
Yeah, that totally does.
It's complex.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's always different factors that affect, visas. It's not as easy as, it's not always black and white.
Especially
Politics.
nowadays with everything's changing so quickly nowadays, and
Yeah, since we're talking about that, Korea has recently implemented, just literally over less than a month ago, they implemented a new visa requirement for long-term expats living here in South Korea. And we're required, so anybody who's either married to a national or is residing in Korea for longer than, on a visa that is longer than just the 6 months tourist visa, is required to obtain a re-entry permit if they want to go anywhere, if they want to leave Korea and then come back and not have their permanent residency cancelled. Permanent residency or long stay status cancelled. So they have to get re-entry visa prior to departure, prior to leaving Korea, and then 48 hours prior to returning to Korea, they would have to undergo a medical checkup and provide the results of that checkup to the immigrations here in South Korea.
wow.
Excuse me. So that's a new thing, which is just, it's troublesome, it's bothersome. One more thing that I was wondering about is, even after, the medical checkup, I'm wondering if people returning would be required to undergo the 2 weeks mandatory quarantine. And I guess...
Well, why not? Why not? Why wouldn't they?
Right, exactly. So it almost
unless the medical includes like a corona test.
Yeah, I don't think it's really specified. There's another document that was apparently issued by, I haven't read it yet, but it's issued by the Korean government somewhere. It's 6 pages long, and I assume it might state that. But I mean, if there's a 2-week quarantine upon return, then it kind of nullifies the need for having to do the medical checkup 48 hours prior, because I mean that's the whole point. Unless they're looking for something else other than corona, in the bloodstream upon return. But yeah, what's the situation in Vietnam in terms of like leaving the country right now under?
I'm not sure, to be very honest. I think our schools didn't go back after the holiday. In England we'd call it the Chinese New Year, but in Korea it's Seollal. Here, so after that, the schools didn't go back. They didn't go back until about 5 weeks ago.
Okay.
Um, and we were on lockdown for a good 2 or 3 months.
Right.
Very early on, which was really good. I think the way that Vietnam's handled it has been really amazing, and really grateful to have been where I am, because we had less than 500, 300 cases, and not even single death. And like now we go out, still wear a mask, but I think the economy and everything's kind of opened up again. I don't know about like bars and clubs and stuff, but like my general daily life is kind of back to normal, apart from the extra vigilance, with the washing hands and masks and that kind of thing. So yeah, we're kind of back to normal. I took the kids swimming the other day, which was quite nice. Um, swimming pool full of kids,
Right.
which took me a little while after being so vigilant for months. But yeah, it's there's no like community spread, and there are no cases in the community, which has been like that for, I have no idea now, maybe more than 2 months,
Right.
maybe like 60 days, 50 days. So it's really, our situation is really good, touch wood. So, and there was one point when Korea was number 2, on like the list of,
Yeah. Yeah. Of the nations with the most
and
cases.
and being with my Korean connection, I could feel the look, the look of non-Koreans, and I was really proud of Korea as well, because slowly, day by day, it kept coming down the list as others went up the list, and Korea's doing a tremendous job as well, which is really good. I just wish my third home, the UK, would maybe follow suit and provide my family over there with a bit of a safer environment to match my my second and third home in Korea. So yeah, it's interesting, tough times, but I think we'll get through this, and it'll be better on the other side.
Hopefully. So, in addition to all the stuff that you do or have done, you also wrote books, and I assume you write them out first. Popular children story podcasts. Sorry, are those books or podcasts that you hold?
Well, both. Yes.
Okay.
Answer is yes.
You've got 23 books on Amazon posted right now?
Yeah, at the moment, I think 23, 22, 23.
Okay. Are they just
some of them are
like storybooks for reading, or picture books, or what's the story with your storybooks?
What's the story? Well, actually, I have about, on Amazon, like 20 something, and ready to publish, or in the process of being published, I've got probably another 60 plus, short stories.
Okay.
So I've got them all in a file, and there's like about 90,000 words, like 200 pages, A4
You drum that out
pages
on your computer or in your head before you?
Well, I didn't type a single word.
All right. You just record it?
Well, the stories are all improvised, and so basically I get my phone or my my mic, and I'll press record, and I'll tell a story. And sometimes it's prompted, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just like comes out, and then I'll stop record, send it to the podcast. It goes out everywhere, and I started it last year, like literally this time last year, when my kids were back home in Korea for the summer. And yeah, that's kind of grown. The podcast's grown, naturally and organically, and so I've got all these books, all these like stories, should we say, all these stories I'm now transcribing from the audio into the written words, and I'm editing them and then turning them into books.
Interesting.
So yeah, so I've got all those plans for the foreseeable future, and now that I've got another number 3, the little boy,
yeah,
I can see I've got another several years of storytelling ahead.
It's interesting because our stories are very similar. I used to do the exact same thing with my kids without the recording. But when my kids were younger, I would lay down and start telling them stories, just random stuff about bears and monkeys and bunnies and stuff. And my wife would always urge me to start recording these things. She's like, just record the stories, record the stories. I never did, but you're like the better version of my storytelling because you actually took the time to record the stories. So that's good, man.
Yeah, well, the idea came from, like I wanted to have something that my kids would look back on and be proud of, and my wife would come to me with lots of ideas. So, oh, look at this father who opened up a bank account, like the Korean 통장.
Uh-huh.
And every time there was a moment in the kid's life, like the first tooth or the first step, he would put in some money, and that was the notes. And so this, for example, there was a bank book with all this money, and each of the entries was like first tooth, first step, first, first or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and she was giving me all these ideas, hints, like, what are you doing? I'm like, So the idea came. We've got lots of books, as you can see in the background.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to, I've been telling my daughter stories for such a long time, and then one day she said, "Daddy, don't read the story. Don't read the book. Tell me the story." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She said, "Don't read the words. Just tell the story." So I started to tell the story, making them up as you go along from the pictures in the books, and then it was like, the lights are off, lights are out, so you got to tell the story from your mind. And after several half sleeping, kind of, "Daddy, what are you talking about?" Oh, like delirious stories. Anyway, I wanted to capture my voice as a recording of all the books that my daughter has and all the stories that I've told her. I wanted to capture my voice so that when she has children, she can play the recordings, and it's not grandpa's voice, it's mommy's, daddy's voice when mommy was like 4 or 5. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I wanted to capture that, and then maybe like her children's children, and that would be, oh, that's grandma's daddy's voice when grandma was like 5, when she's 5.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of cool. So that was the essence. I wanted to record all the books that we have and just put them on a USB or something. When they were in a different country for the summer, I was sending them Kakao Talk, and wife would play it, and I would be reading them and sending them, reading them, sending them, trying to get one every night, trying to kind of keep up a routine.
Right.
And I had a library, like, I had like, I can't remember how many, but I just plopped them all onto a podcast, and the rest is history, so to speak. So
Very
I've got like
cool.
like 1,000 followers on Spotify at the moment, and getting about 2,000 downloads a day from the listening. So yeah, it's going well. So yeah.
It's good.
I have to wrap up in a couple of minutes. So
Yeah, so
sorry.
do I, basically, because it's 10, almost 11. So, I guess on that note, what are your future goals? Like, where do you see yourself going in terms of your career, your work, your storytelling?
I just want to keep going. Maybe I don't really have a big plan. I think I want to just create that like a good library for my kids' kids and their kids, and maybe just be. I like the word prolific. I'd like to have like 1,000 stories. The guy with 1,000 stories, and that's about it really. I've got some workbooks that I've pulled out from from watching some videos and stuff. So I've got those which kind of helping students, and I like to create workbooks that actually enable action to be taken, not just kind of a lot of theory. So I've got a few of those going on. I've got some phonics books I'm using to help my daughter learn the phonics.
Yeah.
And just keep plodding along, just work hard, and hope try to share my experience and hope that I can help a few people along the way.
Sounds good. All right. Well, any last words? of wisdom?
No. Thanks for having me. The time's run out. I gotta go, but maybe I'd love to do it again. If there's anybody who has any questions that I'd love to answer. And yeah, that's it. Thanks very much. It's been enjoyable, and I'll look forward to catching your show in the next episode.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for agreeing to come on the podcast, and all the best, man. And hopefully we'll catch up again sometime.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Jack.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Well, and that's all she wrote. And there goes Martin. So that was a very good talk. Martin's got a lot of, a pretty decent, interesting background. Fascinating story, as Red put it. If you are here first time or revisiting, you may have noticed that the podcast has been moved to a new channel, and the reason why it's been moved is because I wanted to separate the Live in Korea channel from the Korea podcast, and hopefully help the YouTube algorithm along and kind of determine what it is that the Live in Korea channel it actually is, and then hopefully give the Korea podcast kind of a life on its own, of its own. So hopefully this move will allow both the channels to thrive and grow faster. I still have to move most of the older episodes of the Hagwon Startup podcast to this new channel. Right now there is none. There are 2 in the work, but it's 67 podcasts, which is a lot of work. And I just rewatched the first and the second one. The topics were great. The quality of the video was horrendous. I think the first podcast got a lot of views, which is quite surprising considering the quality of it. The light was bad. The camera was bad. It's still not great, but it's a little bit better than it used to be. We were running things on Google Hangouts, which was just a very rough setup, not as this, refined piece of machinery that you see right now with the chat right next to it. But so I'm kind of hesitant about uploading those videos back, but I find that the topics that we covered in those videos were quite good, quite interesting. So I'm doing that. I'm going to do that slowly, and the videos will come up and they will have headings and new thumbnails. So if you keep coming back to the channel and you're wanting to look over some of the older stuff, then you will be able to read the descriptions of the videos and see what it is that each video is actually offering, which may actually be another way of boosting, this particular channel's performance, the Korea Podcasts channel performance. Right, okay, so that's it for tonight. It's 11 o'clock. I'm dead tired. Is again, a lot of things going on. I'm working on the K-influencer assignments. I'm running the Hagwon and doing this. Now, splitting the channels is kind of additional work. But in terms of Hagwon work, things are going good. Bruno says good night. Good night, Bruno. Hope you had a good week or good Monday. Thanks, Red, for watching. All the best for next week. I'm not sure what the topic will be. I will ask around and see if there's anything interesting to talk about. We'll find something. If there is anybody here and has some proposals, thank you, Red, for connecting me with Martin. Much appreciated. If there are any other proposals for people to be interviewed here, shoot me a message. And if not, then there's going to be another, I don't know. We'll find out. Anywho, again, thanks all for watching. Have a good night and a fantastic week. Bye-bye.